Tech Talk with Matthew Dickerson. Matthew Dickerson. Tech Talk. Sit back and relax. It's time to talk technology.
Hello, overachievers. It's time to sit back, safe in the knowledge that you've done enough for now. Give yourself a 45 minutes reprieve while you tune in, or tune out, I should say, from the madding noise and tune in to Tech Talk with Matthew Dickerson. In today's episode, we're mining gold from our e-waste, of all things. We'll dip into some Renaissance-era design to put a new spin on drones of the future, if you'll pardon the pun there. And we'll have a rethink about the outlook of a future with robots and maybe flip the whole Terminator apocalypse style future thinking there. But before we get too carried away, welcome to the microphone, the brains behind the operation. Welcome, Matthew Dickerson.
Hey, good morning, good afternoon, good evening, wherever you may be in the world at the moment. How are you going?
Yes, I'm doing very well. How's everyone else doing?
Oh, hopefully they're doing well as well. They're obviously very intelligent people because they're tuning into this wonderful podcast.
Exactly.
But a quick story this week, which just gives you an idea of how scammers operate on luck. And this is, when I say luck, the volume they put out there, they're going to be lucky with some. And I talked to my daughter, had dinner with my daughter the other night who's about to go overseas, so just a quick dinner with her before she ducks off overseas. And she said, oh, look at this email I got, Dad. Now, she'd use Booking.com. Now, this is no reflection on Booking.com. That was just the site she used. They didn't do anything wrong. She'd use Booking.com to book a whole range of things on an overseas trip. No big deal there. And she'd paid for some of those. There was still some left to pay. And she received an email and said, you must pay these or you must pay these items by tomorrow to validate your booking. And so, of course, Booking.com, that's fine. But she looked at it again and went, hold on, something doesn't look quite right there.
And the other thing is that anytime you get hurried,
yeah, that's a bit of a red flag. But she understood that because she's about to go, so it would make sense that she's being hurried.
Okay.
And this is what they rely on. So anyway, she looked at it a bit closer and went, that doesn't look quite right. And so she was smart enough to go, that's not right. I'm going to go back to the actual website where I booked it, log in with my account where I've got the details and actually go through that process. And it turned out, yes, there was still the small amount of money left owing on it, but this other one was completely different. Now, what they're relying on here is just someone, if they blast out 100 million emails that say, oh, you're Booking.com, last payment, make sure you get it done, there are going to be some people out there that are going to be in that situation like my daughter was. It's blind luck by the scammers. But when I say blind luck, it's relying on volume. If you send out 100 million emails, you're going to get 1,000 people maybe that are just matching up to the situation. And I've had the same conversation with people about banks. They go, oh, I got one of that. I knew it was a scam because they said pick a bank. Your Westpac bank account needs to have this done to it. I don't bank with a Westpac, so I know that's a scam.
Clearly.
But there are, 10% of people that might bank with Westpac. So 10% of people going, oh, I better have a look at that. And then the next day there'll be one that comes out and says, your Commonwealth bank account. And then, oh, I bank with Commonwealth. That must be me. So they're relying on the fact that they can just send such huge volumes. And then out of those, they're going to get some small amount of people that are going to line up with those particular circumstances. And then some of them, in a moment of weakness, my daughter might have been very busy at the time. She got that, I've got to get that done. I've got to pack. I've got to get sorted. All right, that's one more thing on my list. I'll go and pay that now, done. And that would have been X dollars gone out the window. So, gee, you've just got to be so vigilant. And
you do.
What annoys me is you've got to be suspicious. Any phone
suspicious
call,
of everyone.
That's right. I tend to find myself now, if it's a phone number I don't know, I'll answer it and I just pause. I say nothing because I'm waiting to hear the background noise of a scammer's site or just a bit of a click. Sometimes when you get these overseas scam calls, there's a bit of a pause and a click, but there just seems to be a lot of background chatter where there's obviously they're in a call center environment, but they're obviously not a lot of money being spent on that. So there's a lot of background chatter and you just go, this is a scam. And then they start talking. But when it's a legitimate phone call, they go, hello, have I got Matthew? I go, sorry, Matthew here. Yeah. So you're just waiting to hear that, which sounds a bit rude the way I answer the phone because I am waiting to see if it's a scam, which is probably 50-50 chance.
That's right. Yeah, it's just the way we live. You've got to live life now like you're walking through the streets of Victorian London, with the Artful Dodger around every corner, ready to pick your pocket.
That's a good analogy. I like that. Actually.
Yeah, and so we're constantly being jostled through this crowd.
Yeah, that's right. Check your pockets. after every phone call.
Checking your pockets, folks.
That's right. Yeah. So it's very easy.
Oh dear, oh dear. Well, that's our little scam alert for today. Let's get on with our other stories that we've got. Now, I find littering to be the most distracting, frustrating, completely unnecessary of all the social evils. It's just so easy to not litter these days. And clearly, someone in the UK understands me. With CCTV cameras already so prevalent across Great Britain, it's not an enormous leap to connect AI into the mix and bust some of those thoughtless litter bugs, Matt.
I want to go back to a story from a couple of years ago. Back in 2023, I put out an announcement that said that we were going to start collecting the DNA the DNA of all of our residents and create a database of all of these people. So we'd have James Eddy, and there's your DNA on record. And the reason we're going to do this is because when we picked up litter on the side of the road, on parks, wherever it might be, we would then match that litter with the DNA we found on that litter to that person. Oh, James, we found some litter that you've dropped in Victoria Park, therefore we're going to send you a fine. And it was an April Fool's Day gag. So it was an announcement on the 1st of April.
And it was enough to upset some people, right?
Oh, privacy advocates were at my throat saying, how dare you have a database of all residents and their DNA. And of course, what happens if someone comes from outside the area and drops a bit of litter? Well, we wouldn't have those, but maybe we'll make this Australia-wide at some stage. Oh no, that's even worse. But the serious message in all of that was that littering is annoying, and we see litter on the side of the roads, and there's only one way that happens. People drive along in their car and they throw litter out the window. And it's foreign to me. If I would have done that with mum and dad in the car as a kid, we would have stopped the car, backed up, and we would have said, right, get out and pick up that bit of litter. Well, while you're there, pick up the other 100 pieces of litter around it.
Yeah, that's right.
It's just something
There were those ads back in the 70s and 80s with John English. Do you remember put your rubbish back, get the knack, don't do the dirty on us? You don't remember that at all? I watched far too much television. But the message was clear to me, and it just seemed, it doesn't take much just to hold on to that rubbish just a little bit longer until you get to a bin.
That's right. How hard's that?
Yeah.
So, I was thought you were going to get down the don't be a tosser ad. So I think it's a problem, which I don't get. It's a problem that's pretty easy to solve. Just don't throw rubbish out the window. But that seems to be too much. So we've got to have technology.
One is people who in a car park will just leave their rubbish where there are bins, somewhere just get out of the car and just pop it. But they'll leave it just outside the driver's side door or whatever.
Well, I've seen people do that where they have the door open and they just drop it on the ground. They think they won't notice if I just drop it on the ground beside the car. So,
you've got to put so much thought and effort into not putting it into the bin.
That's right. You just get out and walk over to the bin.
Sorry, that's my rant. I'm just going to back my truck up now.
No, that's a good rant. So in the UK, they've decided that no, they can't appeal to people and say, please stop throwing rubbish out the window. So they bring AI into the mix. Now, the cool part about this is there are lots of cameras around already. There are speed cameras, there are cameras at traffic lights, etc. They have also got the ability to use portable cameras, like we see now with portable cameras that we see in New South Wales anyway, for seatbelts and for mobile phone usage. So it basically just goes along like on a trailer and it sits up a little bit higher and it captures cars as it goes past. What they've done though, and very clever, I had a bit of a look at how they were doing this and the technology used in it, and I was quite impressed because one of the things, it's actually the number one littered item globally, and that is cigarette butts. Now, cigarette butts are incredibly damaging from an environmental perspective. They still look disgusting, but they're small. So when someone has their fast food takeaway packaging and they throw that out the window, that's pretty easy for AI to go, projectile coming out the window fairly slowly because it's fairly big, a lot of surface area, and it's large enough that AI picks it up. But cigarette butts are a bit trickier. They're small and they go out, and people have the knack of the flick. They just flick the cigarette butt. So it goes out. They don't just drop it out the window. It's got to be the flick. And so the cameras, I was watching it, and the cameras are watching cars go past, and then they detect something going out. So some motion detection first of all, and then working out from that motion detection, was it something that would be classified as litter? Now, I was trying to think of what else might be a projectile that's not litter out the window, but I couldn't really think of anything obvious there. So anyway, so it picks up a projectile, picks up the motion of that projectile, picks up that's now litter, and then that license plate of that car receives a fine in the mail to say you just threw some litter out the window. Now, they're doing a 12-week trial, and this is in the East Riding of Yorkshire Council.
It's going to upset some people.
Absolutely right.
But in your face, litter bugs.
That's right.
Yeah?
If you're going to litter,
Suck it up.
be upset. I don't know. So the 12-week trial, I don't know whether they're going to just issue warnings in those 12 weeks or actually issue fines, because it is an offence. It's illegal to litter.
Yeah.
So they could quite easily issue fines for that. But the idea is run it for 12 weeks, see how it goes. After that, then expand it maybe to other areas in that council area. Other councils might want to jump onto it as well. So overall, it seems like a really good use of technology, using some existing technology, but adding AI into the mix.
For sure.
Yeah, so I thought it was a good one.
Let's bust them.
Bust
everyone.
them and bring it to Australia as soon as we can, I say.
Now, you may be completely unaware, but the average household is sitting on a tiny gold mine, or at least the gold mine lies somewhere within the home or back shed. E-waste is riddled with gold, and the average home is in 2025 is riddled with e-waste. But Matt, up until now, extracting the gold from said e-waste has been quite problematic.
It has been problematic.
Up until now.
Yeah, up until now. And there's some research being done by Flinders University, which is fantastic because it's got a whole range of other implications as well. But the first point that you make is absolutely valid. People have got their bottom drawer in their office, they open it up and they go, oh, there's that old Nokia, or there's that old smartphone that was brilliant and the best thing going 3 years ago when I bought it, but now, how could I possibly think about using that?
We've got a stack of old laptops sitting in the back shed and a box full of old phones.
Yeah, so, and they're quite interesting looking at some of those sometimes and showing the kids, this is how I used to send a text message where I'd press each letter 3 or 4 times to get the actual letter that I was after. So fascinating with all of that old technology tucked away, but there's some e-waste recycling processes now. A lot of local organisations, local councils have the ability to drop off e-waste, but then to get the vital metals out of that can still be a clumsy and somewhat expensive process. If it gets to the stage where it's cheaper than mining it, then people are going to use that a lot more. But at this stage, it still seems to be maybe a little bit cheaper and easier just to mine the original metals they might need rather than actually go through that process of extraction. But Flinders University have come up with a way to use and I'm going to have a crack at this one here, trichlorocyanic acid. So
cyanuric, I think.
Cyanuric, okay, that sounds better. And that's actually commonly used in water disinfection. So it's a much better compound to use rather than typically when you're trying to extract gold, and this is in mining or in recycling, you're using cyanide and mercury plus a lot of water. So it's not great from an environmental perspective. It's expensive to do that. But if you can use something a bit cheaper, as say, like this used in water disinfection, that's going to be a much better outcome. So they've basically got this process. You would take some e-waste, you'd crush that e-waste into some sort of powder, and then you'd feed it through a process using this particular compound. And then they've got a sulfur-rich polymer that the team's created, and effectively the gold binds to that polymer. So it actually takes it out of that compound fairly easily.
Yeah,
and then once you can do that, they've got a process to unmake the combined polymer and gold. So fantastic for e-waste. Might get to the stage very soon.
So clever.
That's right. It's get to the stage very soon where you can actually say it's worthwhile taking this e-waste somewhere and someone will extract that and get that, because on average, you've got about 900 milligrams of gold per kilogram in a circuit board. So you think, well, my phone only weighs...
Yeah, that's not a lot of gold.
That's right. My phone might only weigh overall maybe 500 grams, but overall, if I take that bit of gold and the price of gold, well, there might be $20 worth of gold in this phone. But
Well, yeah, if you're mining gold out of the ground, they'll mine if there's 2 grams in a ton.
Yeah, that's right.
So it's worth doing, but the amount of gold you're going to get out of an old phone or a laptop is probably less than what you would pan for gold if you were down at Ballarat Sovereign Hill.
That's right. So what's in your bottom drawer may not make you rich,
Yeah.
but it might help with everyone contributing those.
Yeah,
and
for sure.
again, there are those e-waste processes which I encourage people to use. The great part about this, though, because when I was starting to read this story and do the research, and I thought, well, that's great, but can they use this same process for gold mining? If you can use it for extraction of gold from an old phone, is there a way to use it for when they take gold out of the ground? And yes, absolutely. That's what they're working on at the moment. They're working on how they can scale that. So at small scale, it works. Can they scale it to large scale? Quite possibly. And ultimately, then you could basically save on the use of cyanide and mercury in a whole range of gold mines across the world. But they're going to start on e-waste, which is not too bad. 62 million tonnes of e-waste were produced in 2022.
Wow.
So, and that's up, as you can imagine, from 2010, up 82%. since 2010. So over a bit more than a decade, it's increased quite dramatically. But again, go forward to 2025, this year we'll see obviously more again because we're buying more and more of these products and more they're obsolete. You don't hold on to them for as long. I remember back in the old days, very early days when I was selling computers, it was very important when someone bought a computer that it was upgradable. You could actually, there was a little lever next to the chip and you'd pop that little lever up and the chip would come out and so you buy one with a 386 chip in it and you could put a 486 chip in it later once they became a bit cheaper and you needed a bit more power. Now, no, you don't do that. You use it for a few years and then go, right, now that's consigned to the bottom drawer or some e-waste provider. So great to see if we can get to that point. Because at some point, I know the holes are deep, but at some point you get to the bottom of that hole and you go, no more gold in this hole, and every other hole is empty as well. Yeah. You're going to have to start using that or mining other planets, which I think is something they're looking at as well.
Yeah, the implications are that, okay, we can be cleverer in the way we extract gold, we regain gold, retrieve gold. Yep. We can be smarter how we regain copper, perhaps, and aluminium and other things as well. This is the lead-in.
When can we get to the stage where we say you don't make jewelry out of gold? We need that for electronics. That's got to happen at some stage. I mean, gold is used in electronics because
the reason it's used in jewelry is because it looks good.
Well, it does, but I want to have a phone that works well rather than something that looks good. But in electronics, gold's used because it's got high conductivity, it's corrosion resistant, and it's durable. Now, not so much the high conductivity, but probably other reasons it's used in jewelry is corrosion resistant and durable.
So, but we've just been talking about this with my Year 11 class this week. That the gold that was on the sarcophaguses and used in those Egyptian tombs, put there 3,000 years ago, is still in the same condition that it was then. That's stuff that has been retrievable and not stolen by tomb raiders or whatever.
But that's right. Whereas if that was copper or if that was iron, then there wouldn't be anything left there now. It would have been all gone.
So that's why gold's so awesome. That's why it's great in phones as well. But I noticed that you've got a wedding ring there. So we're not going to be trading that in to be melted down and used in a phone.
I would be happy to do that, but I'm not sure that I'd have my wife on side.
Pull out. People can hear this. The death toll on New South Wales roads per annum is a significant statistic, given our relatively modest population, that is, and speeding makes up a significant proportion of those deaths. And a significant proportion of those deaths occur in regional areas. Long and winding roads where overconfidence leads to temptation and then to impatience, all in the name of cutting a few minutes off the ETA. So, in a bid to bring down a demoralising statistic, the Minns government of New South Wales is going to shake the tree on some of our country highways, Matt.
Well, I actually remember as a kid driving along and Dad explained to me about the guy on the side of the road, the policeman on the side of the road, holding up the old-fashioned radar gun that would point down the road at people and explained to me about speeding fines. And I didn't quite get it. I said, but hold on, that only means they're going to catch you right there at that spot. It seemed to me as a kid, not really understanding it, that speeding at one spot didn't really make much of a difference because that means I could speed around the next corner, around the next part. So I said to Dad, why don't they just have a guidepost and then another guidepost 100 metres up the road or whatever, and two policemen there with stopwatches is how I imagined it all back in the day, and then a radio between the two of them, and they go, oh yes, I just saw number plate ABC 123 go past in 28 seconds, that's too quick to go between, quick, go and find him. And Dad said, yeah, that's great, but it's a bit impractical, and two policemen there and standing with stopwatches, all the rest of it. So we've progressed a long way since then, and we've now got automatic speed cameras on the side of the road, but it's still that instantaneous, right now you're speeding, or moment. Mobile speed cameras right at that spot. And it's a classic, isn't it? When you see a fixed speed camera, people go along at whatever speed they're going, and then you get to that and everyone's going 5
Harbour
k's
Tunnel's
now.
A shocker for it, isn't it?
Well, that's right. You're going 5 k's below the limit and you crawl through there, and afterwards you need a policeman park half a kilometre up the road, because afterwards then we go,
you'll make a mint. Yeah.
So average speed cameras make so much sense to me.
Yeah.
And in this state, in New South Wales alone, we've got 38 different spots where we've got average speed cameras. And they vary. The length of those varies from 1 kilometre is the shortest I could find, and that is the Sydney Harbour Tunnel. So it's a 1 kilometre average speed tunnel there, up to 94 kilometres. There's a section between Forbes and West Wyalong on the Newell Highway. It's a 94 kilometre section of Newell Highway where you go too fast on average over that length, then you're going to be hit with a fine. The rest of them vary. There's some that are 7, 9, 10 kilometres, 20, 36, 60, etc. But all of those average speed cameras are designed for heavy vehicles, trucks, buses, semi-trailers, that type of thing, rather than light vehicles or motorbikes. And so that's the change that Min's government has made from the beginning of this financial year. They've said, we're going to trial just 2 of those 38. We're going to trial those 2.
Not telling us which 2?
No, they are. They're telling you one on the Pacific Highway, one on the Hume Highway,
right.
2 that have got some pretty bad records around those areas for fatalities or accidents in the very least. And they're going to trial it, and they've been running the trial for the last 2 months where they've been sending out warnings. So you were caught doing over this speed on this particular time.
Yeah.
Don't do it again next time, you'll be fined. And so from the 1st of July, they basically said we're going to start fining people. But my personal view is I'd say, well, turn them all on. Why not just have them all? If you're going to speed...
It's interesting they've only chosen 2.
Yeah, and I think it's probably political perspective that some people think it's their God-given right to be able to speed and it's my car and my road. I'll do what I want on that. Yeah. So I think it's more political and just introduce it because New South Wales is the only state that hasn't had people being fined in light vehicles. In average speed cameras across the rest of the nation, if they've got average speed cameras, they say anyone that comes through here is going to cop a fine if you're going to speed over the average length of that. To me, this is part of the solution. The 1,300 deaths last year, to me, is way too many for the cars we've got, the safety we've got, the information we've got now, the knowledge we have. Surely we can do better than that. But the stats are a bit scary. Speeding contributed to 42% of the fatalities last year. Yeah. Now, there's some argument there. You might argue, was it speeding and someone got distracted? But that's the stats as they record them. They say 42%. So
well, if you were going too fast, then speed is a part of your accident.
It has to be somewhere in there because even if you're going too fast and something else happened, you've got more chance to recover if you're not going as fast.
Bingo.
But when you're going faster, then it's a bit scary. So what can happen and what you end up like in terms of we're pretty soft and fragile, our bodies, and we've got something we're going at speed and suddenly we stop, that suddenly can be bad.
And braking as you get faster, the distance you cover, the faster you go, increases exponentially.
Yeah, that's right. There's a thing that I'm very proud of that I did for all my kids is I took them through advanced driver training when they were getting their P plates, etc. You do all your hours, 120 hours on their Ls, and I took them down to Sydney to a Eastern Motorway, I think it's called now, where we did some advanced driver training. And so I went along and watched a few of those when they did them. And one of the things they did, which was very clever, was they said, okay, we're going to go back to this spot here. You're going to go along 6 kilometres an hour. You're going to brake. You're going to brake as hard as you can. But I want you to all estimate how far away it is that you're going to be able to stop. And so they put a little marker there and they did that braking and that was all fine. And they got that distance. So right now, I want you all to tell me how far we have to move that marker along if you're doing 80. Yeah. 60 to 80 doesn't sound a lot, 20 k's extra. And so the kids all guessed and they put a little witch's hat there and every one of them would have absolutely cleaned up that witch's hat. If that was a person, they said, so pretend it's the person and you reckon you can brake by this point. You know how far it takes to brake at 60, so it's just a bit, and all of them way underestimated. Yeah. So that difference, as you mentioned, that extra 20 kilometres an hour made a huge difference to the actual distance it took. So all of them, and that's what the trainer was trying to indicate. You're going too fast. You all thought that you could brake by here. There's none of you could possibly. It didn't matter about how hard you could brake or how good a driver. The physics say that you're just not going to be able to stop by there.
Or how good the brakes are. Yeah, that's got nothing to do with it. It's just classical physics. Yeah.
Physics, that's right. So I think it's a good move. And I'm interested to see how far or how long it takes before they go to all 38 across the state.
Smart glasses are making big news in the tech world these days. Competition is running hot to find the best innovation to corner the smart glasses market, where if you snooze, you lose. Now, Matt, what does the Chinese tech company Xiaomi have to offer the sunglasses market?
They've got
smart glasses, I should say.
Yeah, they've got a couple of interesting pronunciations, have they? So I say that one is Xiaomi, so you say Xiaomi.
I had to look it up and get Google to pronounce it for me.
Right, okay. Well, yours is probably better than mine then. And there's see Huawei as well, which is one I remember a video that Huawei did. They went around to people across America and Sydney and all sorts of different places and said, how do you pronounce this word? They put the word in front of them and everyone got it completely wrong. The whole advertising campaign was around how to pronounce Huawei. So there's a fair bit of competition now. We've talked previously about a couple of different Meta glasses. Years ago we talked about Google glasses. Xiaomi has basically launched, they've got their smart audio glasses and their AI glasses. And probably the biggest thing with these different glasses at the moment is whether or not they project information into your field of view or it's just audio. So some of these glasses are audio only.
Right.
They use cameras on board to look at what you're looking at. So you can say, tell me about that building in front of me. Here's this person walking up towards me. Can you remember his name and tell me that? I don't know how well it would do with that. But basically, you can have a conversation with AI via your glasses. And again, some of these different glasses will then project information in your field of view. Other ones just talk to you and tell you, I think it's James Eddy coming up towards you. Just say, g'day, Jimmy, and see what happens.
Surely they'd recognise me.
That's right. AI is your friend. That's the guy that's nice to AI. So the interesting part here is Xiaomi have put out a new SI unit in their announcement of these glasses. So now the new unit of weight is not
nothing to do with swimming pools or no, okay, right.
No, swimming pools seem a bit over the top for glasses. They've now come up with 5-cent pieces as an SI unit for weight. So these glasses are 40 grams, about the same as 8 5-cent coins.
So what you need to do is make a string of 8 5-cent coins and drape them over your ears and just think, does that
feel okay?
Yeah, you can wear that.
And I'm a bit disappointed they had to come up with something they had 8 of. Surely you can come up with something that was one of for 40 grams rather than 8 5-cent coins. So these have got hands-free voice control. They've got open ear audio, 12 megapixel wide-angle camera. It does 2K video recording, about 8.5 hours of continuous use. I mean, they're pretty impressive when you consider, you look at them and you go, they look like normal glasses, but the arms on the glasses are a bit thicker than normal, but sometimes that's trendy. And in that arm is your processing power, your battery, you've got the camera technology built in, the speakers that sit over your ears. So you can walk along and you can say, I'm looking at a building, can you tell me the history of that building? And you'll have AI talking to you in your ear. Part of the competition, I think, because I think they're going to be very similar hardware-wise. Part of the competition is who you have the conversation with. Now, Xiaomi has got their voice assistant called XIAO AI. Not sure how I go pronouncing that one. Sha AI.
No, you're on
maybe?
your own.
Thanks. Good on you. So they've got their AI assistant. So when Meta has their glasses, they've got their AI assistant. So I suspect that the quality of your AI assistant is going to determine who wins the smart glass market more so than the hardware. Because I think they're all going to have good cameras.
Where they are now,
The hardware itself is all going to be pretty good overall. But Xiaomi is they're making a bit of an impact. So they did do some smartphones previously. They're doing EVs now. They're making a bit of an impact on electric vehicles in the Chinese market. They're now coming with smart glasses. So there are some Chinese companies that are making some major plays in the technology space. Yeah. And if you were to believe some of the things happening between China and America, for example, then China's in a pretty good spot where they're tying up some of the raw resources needed so they could really lock out some of the American manufacturers out of the manufacturing space.
It's going to be a very interesting sort of sphere to keep an eye on, isn't it? How this is all going to pan out and evolve over the next 4 or 5 years. Yeah.
It is. Now, they're not too bad in terms of pricing. You pay about $400 Aussie for these, for the base model. And something that's happening more often now is you're getting more glasses that are getting electrochromic control. So basically they'll go darker when you go outside and go lighter when you go inside, rather than have sunglasses for outside and normal glasses inside. You just have the one and you'll have the glass actually change as you go in and out of light or darkness. So the electrochromic models are $514. So basically a little bit dearer than the normal model, but not too bad.
$514 is still not too bad at all,
for what is in them.
For what
this
you're
is
getting,
the thing. You're getting some of the intelligence of a smartphone and a pair of glasses, and I think they're pretty impressive.
And you've stepped into the future.
You have, absolutely. So you've got Meta, you've got Huawei, you've still got Google who are talking about a comeback, you've got Apple. So you've got a lot of manufacturers, both traditional tech manufacturers and some newer ones coming in that are really focused on this whole smart glasses market. The whole, I suppose, global appetite for this is increasing. We talk about wearables. I suppose these come into the wearables because you are wearing glasses, but there's a whole range of things that are happening in wearables, and this is just another one of those.
Now, let's be real here. Seeing someone walk into an inanimate object like a light pole or a bin because they're so engrossed in their phone is both satisfying and entertaining. We're only human after all. But if you're honestly lost on foot, or maybe trying to enjoy some honest sightseeing as a clueless tourist, then good quality map apps are a must-have. Matt, how does one navigate the busy streets of Paris without being buried into their phone screen, risking public ridicule?
Well, you actually reminded me of a very funny mock ad that was put out when BlackBerries were all the go, and when people addicted to their BlackBerries were called Crackberries and all that sort of thing. Yeah. And there was a comedy show that came out with the new product called the BlackBerry helmet. And the idea was you'd put the helmet on, and that allowed you to look down at your phone, and you could run into things then because your head was protected. But it also had a camera on the helmet, so it could project from the helmet down to your phone, so you never had to look away from your phone, and you could see where you were going. So it was taking having a go at people out there that were so addicted to their phones. But you still see it now, don't you? You still see people with their head down.
Well, there's some funny videos of people walking off piers and stuff like that, and falling into the water and stuff.
That's right. So this is a screen-free concept. Now, one of the things that I like to do when I travel around to different places with the kids more often than not is the first thing we'll do when we get to a new city is we'll go on a Segway tour or an e-bike tour. You have someone at the front, you put your little headphones on, and someone at the front talks to you about the different things you're going and having a look at around that new city, which is fantastic, and you've got a local telling you about things. But sometimes you go, oh, this looks pretty good here, can we stop there? But of course you can't because you're in a group tour and, okay, right, everyone back on your Segway and off we go again. Oh, but I like the look of this place. I want to spend more time here. Oh, I'll come back tomorrow. That's fine. This concept is absolutely brilliant. So the company's called Amy. They've got an app called Amy, AMI, and basically they give you a GPS-based audio tour of a city. Now, I've done this with, say, museums. You go into a museum, you pay your $10 for the little audio device, and you walk around. As you get to various paintings or artworks or sculptures, then it'll tell you about that. So that's fantastic. But this is exploded up to a city-based level. So you can use this app. You just put your headphones in, your AirPods they're saying because it's iOS only, and you just walk around a city. And when you get to one of the things, it's a landmark on there, it's GPS aware. It says, oh, you're now standing in front of blah. Let's tell you all about that. And if you want to spend more time there, spend all day there. If you say, that's enough, I've heard enough, you walk on, it stops and moves on to the next thing. So a very clever way to show off a city. Again, it's relying on Amy to do the upload, so it's not an official tour. It's not like the local council or the local government says, we'll go and create this. There's no reason they couldn't, but it's someone who says, I'm going to go and provide the information so that I attract people to come and use our app.
Oh, there's potential there, and I could see myself just popping the headphones in there and just walking through our town, and I was just wondering, as I walk through the streets, as I'm passing, what history is there or what interesting notes that I didn't know about our town or even there, I think there's a lot of potential.
It comes down to those particular local organisations. To say it might be some local user, it might be someone who says, we want to put our city on your map. Let's go and record the history, record the information. And it's not too difficult because you've just got to have someone that's got that information, record the voice of that, and then obviously link it to a location. So you walk past a particular landmark, and then you're in Sydney. You walk past Sydney Harbour Bridge, and they go, here's the history of the bridge. It was built in 1932, I think it opened, and it had this many people doing it, and so people died on it. Right, yeah.
Sorry.
That's right, early 30s. So, but this many people died on it and all that sort of thing. So you've got all that detailed history as you walk around. So it's an interesting way for tourists, but also for locals, because there's so much history we might know about our own environment where we live. So at the moment, only available in Paris, but that's, again, obviously just because it's just starting out, and they obviously want to pick someone that was popular from a tourism perspective, but I imagine that lots of cities will follow. And there's a few other ones that are similar, but they do rely on a screen. So you've got ones like Voice Map and Detour, and they've got GPS tours, but you need some screen interaction. The real feature for Amy is they're saying you put your phone in your pocket. You don't touch your phone. As you walk around, it's just doing it in the background. You get to a landmark and it starts telling you about that landmark. So it's all screen free. So you can look around and
I think that's very cool.
Yeah, it sounds good, doesn't it?
Starting from scratch, rethinking a design completely takes a rare sort of brain power. But in the case of redesigning airborne drones, some innovators have drawn on inspiration from a famous Renaissance design for the helicopter drawn up some 500 years ago. Matt, many of our listeners would recognise Leonardo da Vinci's scratchings of an air screw, and so some tech boffins have finally recognised the potential.
It is fascinating it's taken this long. I thought surely someone's already done this.
But I guess you probably have seen it. You know those old jalopies that you'd see, the early flying machines that bumped and bounced and twisted and did all sorts of things. So there would have been some experimentation with that for sure.
Probably in real-world experimentation. And the way Leonardo da Vinci drew this was for someone to sit on there and basically power that from themselves. And the weight of the human and the amount of power output we can have, I don't know that will ever happen.
But there was enough, yeah.
Yeah, but obviously now we've moved on a fair bit from 1480 was about the time he drew this, so we've moved on with some of our technologies, and we think that's a long time ago, but I don't know whether Leonardo da Vinci said it himself, but certainly historians have said definitely he drew on the concept of Archimedes' water screw design, and that was done, I mean, Archimedes was alive around 200 or 300 BCE, so he drew on a design from 1800 years earlier and said, if you do it with water and you can screw water along a channel, then maybe we could do it with air. That's right. So air, and in terms of the dynamics of that, air is obviously similar to water, it's just not as dense, so you've got to have a bit more motion to try and make it actually lift there. So we've got drones now, and one of the problems with modern drones is their noise. That's an issue. Yeah. So when we get more and more deliveries, when people go and get their coffee delivered next door, and you go, really? You had to go and get that delivered by a drone? It's getting to the point where I think one of the limitations of drone deliveries is going to be the noise complaints. And so there'll be, I think, certain no-go zones we'll see, or there'll be certain build-up areas where you can't have drones because there'll be too many deliveries from drones that it would just be too noisy. But one of the things that they've done, and this is at Johns Hopkins University, where they've basically done a simulation of Da Vinci's aerial screw. So they haven't built it yet, but in the simulations, what they found is they can make it spin slower than a normal drone propeller. And in doing that, you can actually basically get the stage where it's less noise. And that kind of makes sense. So when I started thinking about why it would go slower, I started thinking of surface area, the magic equation to everything. And with a normal propeller, you've only got, say it's a 4-prop propeller, you've only got the surface area of those 4 props. But the screw has a fair surface area as it spirals up, as I say, as I'm moving my finger up, which is no good to any of our listeners out there. But you would basically had that greater surface area, which means you don't have to spin that as fast. So that's probably better from a power perspective, an efficiency perspective. If I'm not spinning my motor as fast, I'm not using as much battery power to run that. So it's probably going to give you better battery life out of it. And obviously, again, less noise because you're spinning that propeller slower. So the next stage for them is to actually build some working models using this. They did talk about a 2-propeller or 2-screw version rather than a 4-screw version, which I was intrigued about. And I thought of I think it was the Chinook helicopter that had the 2 same-size rotors on that, front and back, and obviously they spun in opposite directions, so you didn't get a turning of the whole helicopter.
From what I understand, having those 2 rotors there like that made it so you could drop the thing on a 5-cent piece.
Well, it certainly made it very manoeuvrable, but I think it gave them great lift power as well compared to a normal helicopter with one large rotor and one that stopped it from spinning around in circles. Yeah. So they're talking about a 2-prop version of a drone rather than a 4-prop. But I thought the 4-prop or 4-screw version would make it more manoeuvrable because you've got the ability to change the speed of each of those 4 propellers. But I'll let the researchers do the work on that. Yeah. But I think we'll see a working model of a Da Vinci screw within the next 6 months, a demo, a eval, whatever model that someone will work on in a university research lab, and then I would be surprised.
Once it gets released into the commercial zone, you just see it develop further from that.
I actually think that'd be fantastic, and I think there's something quite almost romantic about this idea that someone could draw something over 500 years ago, and then 500 years later, someone says, you know what, we're going to build that thing, we're going to make it real. So anyway, very much a forward thinker, obviously.
Now, anyone who's like me and finds themselves once again in the onerous position of being a secretary on a committee knows the pressure of making an accurate record of a meeting for prompt distribution among the members, production of the minutes. Now, producing meeting minutes is the bottom of the list of my fun things to do on a Monday night. Matt, if I could give AI a warm hug for one thing, it would be...
The funny part was I was at a meeting recently and someone was looking over the minutes and they said, my comment about this particular thing isn't in the minutes. And I'm thinking, everyone's so focused on what they said and no one else around the table could remember the exact comment that this person mentioned.
No, so
I definitely said this about that, so can we have that?
Amend the minutes from the last meeting.
Yeah, that's right. So you're right. It's not great. Stockton Council in the UK is therefore piloting an AI transcription software package.
Yay!
That's right. Now, they say that they can have up to 40 attendees and still get accurate minutes. Now, that's a big committee meeting. If you've got 40 people on a committee, that's too big in my opinion. But you
So it's doing voice recognition and whatnot. And
correct. And it says James said, or person one said, person two said, etc. So it's giving you accurate descriptions. But you don't want to read the full transcription unless someone says, hey, remember when I said this at minute 17.03? You want to basically have a summary of that. So I'll give you the full transcription. Here's the meeting if anyone wants to argue about what they said. But more importantly from that, it then comes up with action plans or to-do lists or things that need to be followed up on. And that's the beauty. So as you said, timing up the minutes from a meeting, oh my gosh, that's so laborious. But then from that, you've got to go, oh, now, Billy, you said you do that. Mary, you're going to take care of this. And away you go. So then you're dishing out the jobs from the meeting as a result of these minutes that you're putting together. Whereas this does all that for you and basically goes through and says, here's what people agreed to do. Here's the follow-up. So it's basically compiling all of that. Now, they've done a really good job with this because they've even got the UK Public Sector Union on board. They're called Unison, is the union over there. And they said, we're on board with this as long as it's not replacing staff, it's allowing those staff that are involved in this to do their job better, to use their job or do their time more productively. So, which makes sense to me. And someone who says, well, hold on, my job is to take the minutes from all these meetings. What am I going to do now? Well, I'm sure that person's got other skills, other abilities. So surely there's something else they could do.
As a secretary of a committee, can I suggest I've got 1,000 other things I'd rather be doing?
That's right.
Yeah.
And why not? I mean, if you can do it for a council, the Stockton Council in the UK, why can't you do it for a P&F meeting or any committee? Like I'm involved in a charity a fundraising event at the moment, and we have our meetings each week, and you go through that. And yes, not me, thankfully, someone's got the job of here's the things we've got to do, and here's the agenda for the next meeting, etc. So if you can make that all better, and if you can do it with AI, you can do it presumably fairly cheaply. And maybe they have charity packages or not-for-profit packages where you've got a P&F that can use this particular package, and away you go. You've got that able to be used. So it sounds to me like a good thing as long as unions are still on board and don't try and stop progress. Let humans be humans and do our job really well with other stuff rather than taking minutes.
And this is, one job that deserves a warm hug.
That's right.
It's book review time. Of the thousands of stories that we've done over the past 5 years, this story is a new angle for us. We don't usually do book reviews, but of course, this book we're reviewing would have to be about robots. Now, if you go back through old episodes, you may detect a theme of paranoid fear that commonly emanates from my intros about this subject. But Matt, far from a Terminator-style apocalypse, this author and futurist sees something far more kid-friendly on the horizon.
Well, absolutely. So Automatic Noodle is the name of the book. It's a novel that talks about robots being denied rights. They should have rights like unions and voting and being able to open bank accounts, because why not? They're part of our society. This is going forward to maybe 2060 or thereabouts. And it starts you thinking about a whole range of things. What does the future look like with robots, and what do those robots look like? Yale's got a concept, Yale University's got a concept called Fabratory, or Fabatory, if you like laboratory, but with the name Fab in front of it. And they're basically working on things like soft robots. So rather than having robots as big, scary, mechanical things, because that implies that they're strong and they're tough and they can squish us in their fingers if they need to, having soft robots might make them more acceptable to us. That might make them so that we are okay with these robots that are a bit more like us because we're a bit softer.
Now you're scaring me that this is going to be like an evil thing dressed up as a teddy bear.
Well, it may be.
So now we've moved on from the book review.
We're combining the two.
Combining the two, right, okay.
Because part of the concept in Automatic Noodle is they are part of society. But
right.
Again, Yale has talked about having these soft robots. But
my nightmare is having a teddy bear come down, marching down the hall. For my distraction.
Well, they've actually developed some particular compounds, these things called granular actuators, and they're small fluid balls that expand with heat. You can actually apply heat to them, they expand. So you can have something that comes down looking like a teddy bear,
right.
but then by heat being applied internally, they can then turn into solid structures. So they can then be very hard when they need to be or very soft. But back to the book review, part of the concept here is we are scared about things that are different. And there's a bit of a metaphor in this book about immigrants coming into various countries and we all go, oh, stop the immigrants because they're all bad, but they're people. They just grew up on a different patch of the earth compared to where we grew up. So why should we be scared of those? But robots, because we don't understand robots, because we don't understand people from other countries, they might speak a different language, different cultural values, etc., we get a bit scared about all that. But robots are a bit the same. And so this metaphor in Automatic Noodle is about robots, accepting them into society. Maybe we should accept people into society, but gee, do we really want to accept robots into society? Is this part of, do we want robots voting? Do we want robots saying, no, I think Billy Bloggs would be a good president. Hold on, he's a robot. Well, of course you're going to vote for him. We don't want Billy Bloggs as president. We want a human. There's something in the Constitution about having humans, not robots, as president. So it's a whole range of different aspects here. But I think it's good that we've got people writing stories about our future with robots because I think we will get there. There's no doubt about it that we will have robots as part of our society.
So much technology has come out of imaginings.
One of the things that's also fascinating I find in this book is the different types of robots. So there's a robot in the book called Sweetie. It's a 3-legged wheeled bot. So when I say 3 legs, 3 devices to hold the robot up, but they've all got wheels on them. So there's that. But you've then got a robot called Hands, which is just a mixer with 2 arms. So it doesn't need legs. It just sits in the kitchen and does the work in the kitchen. So it doesn't need all the extra bits to go along with it. You've also got a robot that's called Stay Behind, and it's a humanoid robot, but it prefers doing work in the house rather than going out and fighting battles. So, and I think this is again part of the concept.
So none of these robots are be afraid of, like they're not going to bring about the apocalypse for us.
Well, they might combine. They might vote in the president that's a robot to bring in the apocalypse. But I think the point here is that the robots will be different. We might have an image in our mind of robots being hard metal, hard plastic structures, but they could be soft. They could be made of soft components, or they could be different. They could be very focused on one particular objective, as cooking your breakfast in the morning. So there's a robot that just sits in the kitchen and does everything from there. So it's an interesting world that we're going into, but I still haven't reached my objective, James, of a robot picking up the clothes around the house, put it in the washing machine. We need to get there. That's the first objective. Then we can explore these other ideas.
We finish off today with a story for the new mums out there. Keeping a tab on the feeds, working out how much milk Bubba's taken in. It's a tricky business, especially when you're tired and stressed and battling insecurity and feelings of being overwhelmed. For the nursing mums out there, a new study has been testing non-invasive sensors that can measure volumes of breast milk during feeding sessions. Matt, do you see this becoming a commercial product perhaps?
I do, and I didn't realise it was such a big issue. So Monash University has been doing work on this. The World Health Organization recommends that you exclusively breastfeed a child for the first 6 months of their life. So that's fine. About 50% of infants are exclusively breastfed for the first 6 months. So half the people in the world are doing what the World Health Organization does. 5%, a large reason that they stop breastfeeding is because the mothers are convinced that they haven't got enough milk. They've got inefficient milk supply, therefore I've got to go to the bottle at least to supplement or maybe to replace. Only 5% of mothers experience true milk in supply, but the problem is it's hard to know. When you've got a baby that's on a breast of a mother, then it's hard to know how much milk that baby gets. And no one wants to have their baby underfed, undernourished, hence they turn to the bottle. Now, not to the drinking bottle, not to the alcoholic bottle, to the bottle to feed their baby. So just to clarify there. So Monash University has got a little again, in development at this stage, they've been doing testing so far, but a little device called an Infafeed. And basically it just sits on the neck of the baby and then measures the exact volume of liquid that the baby drinks.
Wow.
Now, how does it
From
do
the
that?
gulping, perhaps?
From the gulping, exactly.
Right.
From the swallowing sound, they've basically fine-tuned it. They found that they were sampling a whole range of different frequencies, and they found in the 400 to 600 hertz frequency range gave the strongest correlation with milk volume. They got to the stage where it was 94% accurate compared to the actual volume of milk drunk.
Right.
Now, obviously, the way they were testing it was with a bottle. So they had a bottle and they said, right, we know we've got 100 mils in this bottle, or whatever the volume was, and then the baby would drink that 100 mils and they'd say, right, test, oh, well, the sensor showed up 94 mils, so we know we've got accuracy levels. At this stage, they only did testing once they had the device ready to go across 24 different babies, and this is specifically in neonates, so the first 4 weeks of their life. So really focused on that initial crucial period there. At this stage, again, it's a little device. It all looks a bit clumsy. It's all in the production mode or basically testing mode, but there's no reason you won't be able to get to the stage where you'll just strap a little strap around your baby's neck. It'll be something that'll be...
That sounds terrible, but yeah.
It does. Loose fitting around the neck. The sensor sits on the throat. The sensor looks like, to go to non-SI units here, about half the size of a matchbox, and sits on the baby's
Only
neck.
5-cent pieces?
No,
Okay.
couldn't work out that one. and sits there and listens to the sound of the baby swallowing. So,
wow.
again, what an interesting concept to go, here's a problem, very small part of the population it applies to. How do we solve that problem? How can we work out that? Because you're starting to think about, how can I measure volume? Because there's no measure on a woman's breast to go, right, I've got 50 mils available now and we've drained down to zero.
Yeah.
How am I going to work this out? So, yeah, the swallowing sound, that's exactly what
me.
researchers came up with. So, a very clever concept. And without a doubt, I can see this being commercial within a year.
But I wonder, sometimes having too much information is bad as well, because this is one particular activity that humans do where young mothers, new mothers, just sweat about absolutely everything. If they get more data on something, that's more things to worry about. But
I think you're right.
But I can see there's a lot of promise for this.
Yeah, and I think the thing that gives me some comfort about that, I think you're right, the more information you have, sometimes there's more to worry about. But the fact that 50% of mothers stop feeding because they think they've got inefficient milk supply and only 5% do, then you go, well, maybe more data would help people in those situations.
Yeah. Very, very good. Well, that's all we have for you today. Smoko's over and you have to get back to work now. That's enough lollygagging from all of you guys out there in listener land. Thanks for another cracking tech talk, Matt.
Well, thank you. And I've got to pull my finger out and get some smart glasses. There's so many on the market at the moment. I've got to play with some. So
we've been talking about them so much lately that we've
I've got to work out which ones to get and then go out and take the plunge and get some so I can play with them, because it does sound like cool fun. And I do see people that I don't recognise sometimes, and I need to be able to ask someone who they are.
Well, I want to go out and build an air screw in the backyard and see if I can get a little personal drone to get up in the air just to launch something using that air screw, knowing now that it's got potential.
Yeah, it does sound cool.
Yeah. Well, thank you for tuning in for another episode of Tech Talk with Matthew Dickerson. This is the only Tech Talking podcast coated in full cream dairy milk chocolate with a crispy wafer filling. It pairs so well with an afternoon cuppa. I'm your host, James Eddy, signing off for another week and looking forward to the end of this chilly Aussie winter. Hope to catch you in another week's time. Until then, take care and we'll see you soon.